Welcome to this next lesson, where we're going to be working on the action lines, okay? And we're going to start explaining these three character designs I made before. The action line, what it represents is the expressions that our characters might have by creating an imaginary line that is presented within the movements of the figures we've drawn and can transmit different feelings and emotions like happiness or sadness. These lines also reinforce the personality of what we're going to design. For example, now we're going to design a series of dummies in which I'm going to include the action lines so that you can see what I'm talking about when I explain this. For example, first they're going to be like hitting something, so the action would go from the head to the end of the leg, and it would be a more curved line, seen as as we would have that dynamism in the action of the punch. So it would be in movement. It wouldn't be as rigid. Okay, so I'm going to shrink it and I'm going to create the next character. So I'm going to create a few examples so that you guys can have these lines pretty clear. Our next character is going to be trying to balance and keep their balance. So we're going to try and look for a curved action line, okay? Because it has that dynamism, all right? Seen as it's, maybe it's like a dancer, all right? So it would be slightly curved as there isn't as much movement as there is with the punch, but there's a slight curve to it all. Seen as they're trying to keep that balance, and it wouldn't be a perfect, stable, straight line. So here's the dummy, and this would be the action line. Well, I'm going to put in one more case before we explain the characters we have here in grey that I've drawn before. So we can put in a line that's completely curved. This guy here is doing, like a bow, so he's almost kneeling. So he's kind of paying his respects to somebody or something like that. And as he's kind of shrunk and he's showing that submission, our line is going to be a little bit curved. Like in this case. I'm going to shrink it, and I'm going to put it here to the sides so you can use it as reference if you want to see an example. Okay, so now we're going to start to explain the next ones, okay? I'm going to go from left to right, and here we can see that we have different personalities. So the action lines that we have here are going to be dynamic, stable, and then dynamic again. The first one will be more in movement, so a curved line. I'm going to draw here a little dummy of the position the mage is in my drawing. It's going to be similar to the one I did with the dancer, but I want the curve to be a bit more pronounced to get that movement and speed feeling, Okay. So, all right, let's go to the next one, which would be the tank. She's got quite a stable posture, quite inspired on geometric figures like the square that I did before there on the left of the dummy that I'm doing now. And as you can see, the stability is quite present, so the action is hardly movement at all. It's really stable. The last one would be the defensive character, so the archer. So I've decided to put her at 3 force to represent that, not distrust, but she's kind of giving her back to us, so she's not really representing an open personality here, and she doesn't really want to show her real face, you know what I mean? So her action line, however, is going to be lightly curved, seeing as her back is arched towards another different direction that her leg's going in. let's start to explain a little more about the characters. And yeah, I'm going to finish the healer, the support character, so that as a last lesson in this class of characters, we're going to be talking about the action line that she has. Okay, so we can try and curve even more, that line. And we can look for different postures that try to recreate that dynamism that we want to give the character with the imaginary line. For example, I'm going to draw another one that's kind of floating, okay? And it's going to be like in kind of like a sideways movement, like the one I'm doing right now, okay? And I don't know. And the next one, we're going to have a person in another position that's in movement, maybe an attack. So our hand's going to be in front of her face. So we can see that action line is still curved. We're looking for that balance in the staff that we just gave it. And yeah, I'm going to put in a last position to look for more kinds of movement. As you can see, I'm using the hand as a kind of attention point here, so that I can reflect the magic where I want to put it. Maybe on the opposite side of where she has the staff, This is slightly more static, but she still has that curve that we want it to have, okay? The last one looks more like some kind of superheroine flying upwards, And here we would have as I was saying before, what I wanted was to create like a focal point. In this case, we would find it in the character's hand, in which she would be creating like that magical aura that could maybe be like some kind of healing stuff or whatever. We don't know. So this here would be a bit of a quick representation of the hand and all that. Okay. This is just kind of like, just hands and stuff that in anatomy. I'm going to try and summarize this a little bit so it's a bit easier. But anatomy and maybe postures would be better to check out one of these wooden model things that you can find at like art shops. Cena's feminine anatomy is a little bit more difficult to explain in like 10 minutes. But I'm going to try and work with this in each of the characters that we're going to have. Because as we can see, the anatomy is not going to be the same in a tank as it would be in a support character. As I've said, the focus points, for example, in this character, we'll be looking at the magic, but maybe in the rest, we're going to be more interested in the weapons they might have, seen as, they're going to be weapons with a little bit more decoration on them. As I did promise, pretty much, I'm going to structure a kind of basic body of a woman in different sections, and I'm going to color code it all so that you can try and experiment with, a little bit when you're working. If you're not super experienced working with Photoshop, you can easily work in a notebook, with a pen and pencil, and then you can scan it and work on the colors later on. For example, we have this structure in which I've divided up the torso, the stomach, and the waist in these three parts. And this green part would be the top part of the shoulders, so that joint between the neck and the arms. Okay, this part here would be where we're going to place the chest. This sphere here is going to be what gives us that mobility. Right now, I'm using those wooden dummies you can find in some shops that can be quite useful when we don't have a very clear knowledge on anatomy. And this is going to help you in the exercise of drawing in action lines, definitely. I would recommend that you use different photos so that you can try and look for the action line. Maybe photos of sports people or people dancing, so that you can draw the action line on top, and then using that image, go along placing these different structures that I'm creating here right now, so that you can place them on top and get them from that, imaginary dummy with our favorite positions, so you can use them as a kind of like a practice session. So I'm going to finish coloring, and the last thing I'm going to do is draw in the arms. As you can see, they're quite simple structures that are quite, well, like the curve is quite present within the drawing. The spheres in dark green will be the representation of the articulations, where you would have the more rotational movement, like with the shoulders, the elbows, the knees, the ankles. Shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Shoulders, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Sorry. As you can see, most of the body is made up by these curves, and it's not something too complex to do once you've kind of learned each of the shapes that make these things up. I'm going to finish up this coloring. And then we would have what we could consider, the dummy that I wanted to kind of make here to one side, so that you guys could have that reference. The ones, right? They're like this. They can have like a base, and they have like sort of a limited movement in their articulations. They're quite cheap. There are others made of plastic, and they're designed to be able to have much more complex postures. But this is a good start. This is fine to start with. Okay. So the curves, it's what I said. You have to keep in mind that I've made this kind of silhouette, like this kind of standard model. But there are so many different kinds of women's bodies. There isn't a canon here. And you can do it with more curves, or you can do it with women that, maybe have a little more weight to them, or has more curves but are more angular, or, taller, shorter. In this case, the races can actually play influence to this. For example, I'm basing myself on this one that's a human, a mage, pretty basic. But to me, this is a really cool thing. I like the curves. For me, they represent more strength or health, something like that at least. I don't know. You guys can do whatever you want. This is your world, so work on it. Really, really, please do. So yeah, this will be the action line for the mage. I'll go along and explain the rest of it. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and you can use it to move on with your art. If you're into sport characters, you know what to do. See you guys in the next lesson. Bye.